My name is AJ, and people just call me AJ instead of my full name. But if you want to try it, you're welcome to. I'm based in Palo Alto, California, and I manage industry and product strategy for SAP's telco, media, and entertainment business. So, what I was planning to do over the next 15 minutes or so is to talk to you about how do we perceive the media landscape. What is the transformation that we see happening in media across multiple subsegments, and what does it imply to SAP in terms of transformation to the way we think about media, the way we go about building products for media? And finally, I'm going to give you a sneak peek into what are the domains that we plan to invest in over the next 36 months. So, in a very simple way, when we look at media, we think about three major processes. How do you take cash and convert it to content? How do you produce content? And how do you manage all the elements involved in production of content? How do you take that content and monetize it into cash, be it through licensing or subscriptions or one-time sales? And finally, how do you actually monetize those eyeballs who actually watch that content through advertising? Now, this process has traditionally worked pretty well, and the media industry has seen significant change over the last few years. But I do believe that what we are seeing now with what we call as the convergent digital economy is putting the industry on the cusp of a massive transformation. So we see three major trends that are happening in this business that I think is going to impact all of us, and is impacting, as Michael pointed out, in terms of what's happened to New York Times. The first one is what we call as content unbound. Now, the best example is we were talking to a movie studio about 2 weeks back, and they said, think about 2015. So it's the year 2015. We all have petabytes of storage in our house. You have super high-speed networks. You have digital watermarking so that if you download a piece of content, it cannot be copied by anybody else. And Spider-Man 10 is coming out. Spider-Man 10 is coming out, and the studio says you download it in the first 24 hours on December 31st, and you actually get it for $9.99. You can not only use it on your TV, you can use it on your mobile, you can take snacks of it and watch it on any form of a device. And they believe that about 100 million users, just because Spider-Man is so popular, will download this for $9.99, because from Jan 1st, it's going to become $14.99. So you're having a situation where you're monetizing $1 billion in less than 24 hours using a completely different form of going to market. Now, when that happens, what's going to happen to your DVD sales? What's going to happen to your existing traditional business models? Now, this may seem a bit far-fetched, but it's not that far from reality. I think it will happen. So the impact that it has on studios and broadcasters is immense. The second major trend that we see is the fact that audience attention is just getting fragmented. I think about 10 years back, people said there's just 2 ways by which you can actually watch content. Today, you probably have about 15 ways. How many of you have watched a piece of TV on internet or mobile in the last 1 week? I think about 50 to 60%, I would say. So TV over the internet, over non-traditional forms of media is going to happen. So what does that mean to traditional advertising? And I think people are already questioning, the old adage that 50% of my advertising is waste. I just don't know which 50%. CMOs in companies like P&G and Unilever and Kraft are standing up and saying, I exactly know what is the performance I get in my digital. Now, why is it that I do not know who's watching my broadcast? And that question is being asked, and as much as broadcast will always be a major revenue generation source for companies, people want it to be based on impact and performance, which gets me to my next point, which is that the whole advertising value chain, starting from the advertiser to the agency to the media owners, be it publishers or broadcasters, is going to change dramatically, because the advertisers, who are at the source of where the money comes from, is demanding impact, is demanding performance, which means that he wants to know not just CPM from Nielsen's, he actually wants to know if the housewife with two kids who buy cereal in Safeway, did she see the ad that I actually sent her out? So that level of specificity in terms of what advertisers are looking to do, is that possible in the near future? I mean, I think it's probably 5 years out, but we wouldn't rule that out. So let's talk about what exactly is the change that we are talking about in advertising. I think the change is in multiple dimensions. One is measurement. Today it's sample-based, it's Nielsen's data. If your MSOs are going to have data on each interaction that your consumer has with the set-top box, they know which ad did he click on, what channel did he watch, what content did he view for what time. You actually have census-based metrics, which is real data on consumers who are going to watch this stuff. So 2 years from now, it's going to be census based, and in some cases, it is census based today. And I think 5 years from now, it may even be based on conversion. When engagement happens in advertising, people can actually, you can actually see how engaged was the viewer. Did he actually click on that Coke ad that he saw, and how does that translate to impact made on the audience? CPM based on demo we talked about. I think it's going to move towards cost per customer, cost per sale. Addressability non-existent today, but clearly happening in the future. The sales model, 30-second spots as it is sold today, may no longer be the way it is sold. I think already you're talking about broadcasters doing cross-media deals where they are selling impressions per demo across multiple properties. I think in the future it may be well based on micro-targeting. Commerce today, it's very limited, but in select cases in IPTV and EMEA, where people actually have the option to buy stuff that they like when they see advertising, you can actually pause and buy it. I think in the future, the couponing business, which is a multi-billion-dollar business, is going to get integrated into how advertising is done on TV. So to go back to what Michael said, what if you see a coupon? I mean, this could be for Tide. You actually see it on your TV. You can actually get it onto your mobile device, and you go to, Safeway or one of your grocery stores. You actually show the coupon on your mobile device at the retail store, and you get your discount. I think couponing is a huge opportunity that is going to get integrated into advertising. So the way that we see this is in SAP internally, we use this term called the convergent digital economy. The convergent digital economy is basically the confluence of multiple industries, specifically telecom, media, entertainment, and financial services, coming together to deliver the experience that the consumer wants across multiple forms of media. Think of it almost like a business network in which you just do not have the media entertainment companies, you have the MSOs, you have the telcos, you have the banks, and they all join the party. The goal being that the consumer gets any content in any place on any device that he wants, with the additional upside that the advertiser is going to go and flock to those consumers when they see the eyeballs, right? So when we talk about change and transformation, people always ask from what to what? What change are you talking about? So if you go and look at information systems that will be impacted by this change, we believe that the new generation systems that need to be able to handle this in content to cache, you need to be able to handle long tail from blockbuster, full form content to chunking and micro content, which means that my content can be split into 1,000 pieces and I can actually sell it off to lots of different partners, but I still must be able to keep track of it. Channel specific to cross media, and we talked about that. Today, some studios have a few partners. You're going to talk about thousands of partners as you get into the chunking, video snacking type of a paradigm. And finally, digital distribution versus physical supply chain. So each of these changes that we talk about have a significant impact on information systems that you have and what you want those systems to be able to do. On advertising, we talked about similar changes, linear to non-linear, single property to cross-media, CPM-based performance to impact-based performance. So I'm going to talk about what does this mean to SAP. SAP is an extremely successful company in the financial space and manufacturing space, but we've been perceived as that. Now, one of the things that we've been debating internally within SAP at the executive level is SAP is just not about manufacturing and financials and the big behemoth it is in software. SAP does lots of other stuff. But we need to play in the heart of some of these industries and convergent digital economy to be relevant to our customers. So one of the things that you've been seeing from SAP in the last couple of years, and we are going to significantly increase the emphasis, is focus on service industries, and particularly on telecom, media, entertainment, and financial services. We believe this is going to be the growth engine for the future beyond 2010. The second thing I would say is that you guys didn't mention ERP, but I'm sure you kind of take that synonymous with SAP, right? Now, SAP is no longer just a company that plays in the back office. Now, we have made some significant changes in the last couple of years, which has basically put the front office at the front and center of how we go to market. So any optimization that you do of your inventory, of your supply chain, it all has to be based on how you interact with your customer. So CRM and investments in that domain is the significant part of our development spending today. The third thing I want to talk about is that about 15, 20 years back, if you all had bought SAP, it was a monolithic piece of code base, and if you didn't know what was happening, you had to go to a manual, which was probably in German. So that has changed a lot, especially in the last 5 years or so. I think the company has taken a hard look at itself and said that in the new world in which you're going to have heterogeneous data sources and applications, you must be able to plug and play in any landscape. That means that your code base has to be services based with clear APIs, with web services wrappers, and that's something that we've invested in heavily over the last 5 years. And finally, I would say that I think in the past, if some of our customers may have had reason to believe that SAP had an arrogant attitude. Anything that was built out of Waldorf, we thought customers should just take it, right? I mean, we know exactly what we're doing. Now, that may have been true in some industries and in some functions, but in industries like media, that obviously was not the case. I think the whole industry is undergoing transformation, and we realize that we need to work with you and co-innovate together in order to make sense out of where we need to go in terms of product direction. So one of the changes you've seen in the last couple of years, especially in media and telecom, is that we have realized that we need to be co-innovating with customers and working together with them to help them understand where they need to go and also take that impact back into the product. And the last thing I would say is that there's been a heavy emphasis on transactions, just not with SAP, but a lot of other vendors in this market. But what many of our customers have come to us and said, transactions is fantastic, but I need to make sense out of this data. I have 100 applications and I have lots of volumes of data here. Make sense out of this for me. And I think our acquisition of Business Objects was really based on the fact that the customer need for insight was getting significantly higher, and they didn't have a way to actually fulfill that. So having said that, that's a little bit of a context on the transformation we see in the industry and how it's impacting SAP and how we are morphing ourselves to meet that need. I'm going to talk a little bit about what does this mean in terms of investments in the media roadmap. I talked about the fact that media is incredibly important to SAP. It is a part of the convergent digital economy, the growth engine that we talked about. And today we have about 600 plus customers with 1,400 installations across N&M, entertainment, broadcasting, publishing, PCP. Now, if we've looked at the evolution that we have taken in this industry, I mean, as you guys rightly pointed out, we started with financials, went into sales and distribution. A few years back, we went into what we call as intellectual property management, and ad management in print and online has also been a significant investment. Now, we believe that this is not sufficient. The industry growth and the transformation that's happening needs SAP to look into new directions, take our products to next generation platforms which can meet the needs of the new landscape. So what exactly are we talking about? We believe that what you see in green here is your traditional channels, and these will always be there. Now, would a broadcaster ever get to a point where all consumption is non-linear over the internet? I mean, it's unlikely. You would still sell 30-second spots. But at the same time, you need to be able to migrate to a model that allows you to package up cross-media deals and also deal with digital, also deal with mobile and video on demand. So the notion of being able to have two parallel models which can coexist with each other, one transitioning to the next generation over time, is really what we want to get into. The ones you see in orange are the ones that I believe media companies obviously need to be investing in a lot, and this is the lifeline of the business. How do you monetize your content in a digital distribution world? How do you do cross-media advertising? And how do you engage with your customer so that you can actually get a 360 view of the customer across multiple channels? So I'm going to spend a little bit of time on each of these domains so that you get a flavor of what exactly we are talking about in terms of direction. And finally, I want to say that the bottom piece here, the enterprise ID management piece, which is our SOA, NetWeaver, that stuff is as important as it ever was. We would continue to invest on it and maintain it and upgrade it, but the new emphasis would be on the ones in orange. So when you talk about monetization of content, I think Michael talked about the notion of content tagging and how important metadata is in the new world. The new world is all about metadata. Advertising needs to have metadata. Content needs to have metadata. And metadata is going to drive behavior not just of the consumer, but also advertisements that are shown in the context of that content. So the ability to create and manage deals and manage thousands of partners and put together these deals and also track the performance of these packages in real time. And if you have a piece of content and you want to know the P&L at any point in time, knowing all the money that's come in and the money that you owe to people, that would be awesome. Today, few companies have real-time visibility to that level of data. So doing something like this needs us not just to see IPM as a standalone application, but see it as a part of an end-to-end process that includes discovery of information, be able to discover metadata in the enterprise, and also be able to integrate it with digital asset management. So these are some of the things that we are going to be working on and already working on today from a content monetization perspective. The second thing I want to talk about is advertising management. As most of you know, we play in print, we have a solution for classified ads, and we also play in online. Now, clearly the market has been coming to us and said, as Michael said in New York Times, they decided to combine print and online. You want to sell package deals to your advertiser. You go to large broadcasters in the US and all over the world, they would tell you that we actually want to sell impressions to a demo. Property doesn't matter, and media may not matter in the future. So how do you do that unless you have a cross-media solution? So we believe that is a market that is dominated by boutique vendors who are siloed in each channel or media. So you have traffic and sales vendors for broadcast, you have people for cable, you have people for video on demand, you have people on the internet. But we believe it's a great opportunity for someone with the size and scale of SAP to look at a cross-media advertising platform that spans multiple channels. So when you do that, you get a single view of your inventory across multiple channels. So if you're not able to deliver certain impressions on broadcast, maybe you can compensate it in digital, you can compensate it in mobile. So you actually give an aggregate view to your advertiser. That's number one. Number two is you optimize much better. You no longer have the issues where you over-deliver on some properties and under-deliver on some others. And finally, you can work with multiple fulfillment systems and deal with multiple types of inventory. So finally, I would say that from a consumer perspective, I think it's important that all media companies open up a direct channel with the consumers. I mean, for newspapers and magazines, clearly that is the way to go in the future because that's the digital world. But even for broadcasters, you still have to open a direct channel with your consumers because a lot of the content consumption is starting to happen in non-linear mode. In a situation like that, you need to be able to personalize, you need to understand what the consumer wants, and you need to also be able to understand consumer experience as they move between media. Now, do you know that this was the same guy who was actually watching this ad and content on his 52-inch television who's actually moved on to mobile? Who has the data? Is that the MSO? Are they willing to give it to you? So the whole host of questions need to be handled. But nevertheless, you need systems that can handle the next generation consumer interaction system. Now, I talked about the rationale for why SAP got into the analytics market, but fundamentally, if you look at this chart here, this is what's happening. I think today, transactions, compliance, relationship inside, transactions are disproportionately important to the CIO. I think what we see as happening is that in the future, and it may be happening in some of your companies today, insight has a huge part to play. Now, insight is making sense out of data, not just in SAP, but data that lies in Oracle, data that lies in third-party systems, and how do you get that insight? And you guys know SAP looks at acquisitions extremely carefully, and we do tremendous due diligence on how do we get other companies into SAP. Business Objects was the biggest acquisition that we made. And the way that we handled the acquisition was we actually took people out of SAP and put them into Business Objects so that they can be an independent analytics company that deals not just with SAP installations, but also with non-SAP. So we see analytics standalone as a huge market where people want us to sit on top of heterogeneous data sources. So the end state that we see is that Business Objects focuses on insight and SAP focuses on efficiency. And you have interoperability between the two stacks. And we also have some productized applications like governance, regulation, compliance, and EPM. But you also have the ability to construct UI and get reporting out of your whole enterprise data, whether they sit in SAP or sit in other sources. So that's kind of the background of why Business Objects is so strategic to SAP. Thanks a lot. And we're the next speaker. Sure.